I want to begin today by recognizing the tragic killing yesterday in Minneapolis of Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old mom, daughter, and friend, and importantly also an engaged community member. It is important in the wake of such a tragedy that we acknowledge her life, her death, and a child and a family that is in shock and mourning, as well as the community grieving the loss of one of their friends and neighbors. I stand before you today to announce the official launch of the ICE Accountability Project. This project has several objectives. First, we are an independent initiative designed to be a centralized, public-facing repository for the collection of alleged criminal and abusive conduct by federal immigration agents during the so-called Operation Midway Blitz. We aim to preserve evidence to facilitate transparency and accountability. We also intend to unmask those agents who have been alleged to have committed crimes or engaged in other unlawful conduct. And to be clear, we respect the thousands of federal agents who live up to their oaths every day to respect the Constitution and the rule of law. I work with these men and women and understand the sacrifices they make on a daily basis. Our project is focused instead on those federal immigration agents who cross the line, who have violated residents' rights and believe that they are above the law. Those agents who have allegedly committed homicide, shootings, used excessive force and indiscriminate use of chemical agents or projectiles like pepper balls and other actions against peaceful protesters. I know from my own experience as a former federal prosecutor and as an investigator of police misconduct that a mask cannot shield agents from accountability. And there simply must be accountability for those individuals if we are a democracy. What we also hope is that this project does further the empowerment of residents across Chicagoland. And let me highlight this point. Since this terrible operation began last September, I, like many, have watched with horror, anger, and frustration to see the forces of our own government seem to relish terrorizing and traumatizing communities, families and individuals who are living in fear. And to be clear, and DHS's own numbers bear this out, the operation here in Chicago and the surrounding communities has not focused on, quote, the worst of the worst or the violent, dangerous criminals. That was always a lie. In a quest to score cheap political points, this misguided operation has swept up moms and dads and grandparents and children, whether documented, with legal status, or U.S. citizens. The obvious goals have not been to make communities safe. It has always been about scoring cheap political points without regard to the consequences to the lives of real people. Ladies and gentlemen, there's simply no reason for us to tolerate those kinds of actions by our own taxpayer-funded federal government. Unfortunately, as the events of the last few months have made plain, and even yesterday, there is plenty to be discouraged about. But I want to focus on what has inspired me and given me hope. And that is the courage we have seen exhibited by everyday Chicagoans, people who put themselves at risk, stepped into the breach to help their neighbors. They have used whistles, formed safety brigades, taken to social media and text change. People have protested peacefully, not just in Broadview, but in Little Village, in Pilsen, the 10th Ward, Lakeview, Lincoln Park, and all across our city and our region. People have found their voices and been a model for the nation on how to resist peacefully and within the bounds of the First Amendment. They have stood fearlessly against these armed militias of federal immigration agents who have attempted to deny them and us our basic humanity and our rights as residents of the United States of America. Chicago, all of us, are ground zero for what a healthy, functioning, participatory democracy looks like. I have felt proud to bear witness to the work that has been done. And as people have inspired us, we hope that through our project to further empower them. And let me walk you through quickly how this new project will work. We now know that hundreds of videos, audios, still photos exist of federal immigration agents taking enforcement action across Chicagoland. We encourage people to go to our website, reporticenow.com, and submit information about what they have seen, and importantly, upload any video or other digital evidence which corroborates the incidents that they are reporting. We are looking to document instances of serious misconduct or alleged criminal activity. Simply put, we want to know and see where people believe that agents have crossed the line. Once an incident is uploaded, we have 2 levels of review. The first level review will consist of individuals working to confirm the basic facts of every submission, such as date, time, location, description, and whether media submitted matches the incident that's been reported. And after this initial review and verification, each incident will be further subjected to a second level of review by experienced investigators who are themselves lawyers or former federal agents or trained investigators. If an incident checks out, having gone through these 2 levels of review, it will then be published to the public. I want to also note that we have built in safeguards to protect the identities of all people who would submit information to our website. And absent a court order signed by a judge, under no circumstances will we divulge the identities of those people who are submitting information to us. We have also intentionally hosted this website on a non-U.S. based platform. Unfortunately, we are painfully aware of how certain U.S. companies have acquiesced to the unlawful demands of this federal administration and censored content or denied access altogether. Our goal is to promote democracy by creating a lasting repository that can be used not only to promote transparency, but to hold accountable those who have or dare violate our rights. Now, some may ask why I stand here alone as a Black woman talking about incidents that have largely affected the Latino communities across Chicagoland. To that question, I say, why not me? As a daughter of parents who grew up in the Jim Crow South, where the color of one's skin and mere existence put my father and mother and my family members of their generation at risk for their lives on a daily basis, what is happening now, here, in our time, deeply resonates with me. I have the ability, the privilege, and really, in my view, the obligation to use my voice to speak out about what is happening to my friends and neighbors. I also recognize that it may not be me today, but I dare not turn away from somebody else's pain and suffering. That is not how I've ever lived my life. Also, this launch today has been months in the making and is a result of hard work by many. What I know from my private conversations is both that many who have been the advocates and the organizers are very supportive and welcoming of this project. Ladies and gentlemen, I also know that the fear that the federal government has created by weaponizing the IRS and other parts of the government against people and organizations is real. Leaders and stakeholders who have community-rooted organizations are afraid to be involved with this initiative that we all assume will be targeted by the federal government. I understand and respect their concerns, and we will nonetheless work together to reach the people and communities we need to reach. And let me close by how I began. We mourn the killing of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, the shooting of Miramar Martinez, the harm to Debbie Brockman, Reverend David Black, and countless others. And we abhor the state-sponsored terror that has been visited upon many across Chicagoland, and particularly the residents of Little Village, Pilsen, and other neighborhoods who now live in fear and have been for months, seemingly without end. It is for those and others that we will continue to lift our voices and be shoulder to shoulder with them in this fight against an oppressive, unconstitutional, and downright mean-spirited federal government. We urge residents to visit reporticenow.com. And if you saw something, particularly something that just didn't sit right with you, report it so that we can continue to create a living testament to how we in Chicagoland are righting the federal government's wrongs. I'm now happy to take on-topic questions.
Considering what the Justice Department has become, how is there ever going to be accountability with Trump in office?
Well, as you know, local governments, local prosecutors, whether at the county level or at the state level, have the ability to also investigate and run parallel investigations and do what must be done to hold people accountable. So I am optimistic. We're starting to see that. Just yesterday in Minnesota, we saw discussions about local law enforcement agents and prosecutors opening up investigations, and I'm hoping that we see that happening, frankly, in all these jurisdictions where we've seen federal immigration agents step over the line and do harm to people. Yes, ma'am.
Who's paying for this? And also, ultimately, besides publishing it, what's the goal with all the information? I mean, are you hoping to turn it over to local jurisdictions to see if they will prosecute federal officers?
Well, part of the reason of having a public-facing portal is for anyone who has the ability to investigate and determine what the facts are, that they will have that information in one centralized location. Because what we've seen is, look, people, as you well know, and many of the reporters and the TV stations that are here today have been the beneficiaries of iPhone videos, other phone videos, other information that's been collected by people that are out in these neighborhoods and on the front line. But it's dispersed amongst literally hundreds of different people. Sometimes it makes its way into a news report. Sometimes it makes its way on social media platforms, but it's ethereal. It could disappear just like that. What we want to do is gather that information in a centralized location so that people who are inclined to do something, people who are in authority, have the ability to do that. And frankly, having put together a lot of this information on some of the worst instances of, I would say, alleged criminal activity and other excessive force circumstances, it is humbling, scary, but also empowering to see all of these incidents reported in one place. That's why I'm hoping people will go to reportice.now and help build out this repository of information so that it survives into prosperity. Yes, ma'am.
And then who's paying for it? Who's funding this?
Oh, we have had the benefit of some generous donors, but that's all I'll say about that.
And how is it exactly going to work? So you guys are gathering all the information, all the videos is uploaded,
Well, again, as I mentioned, our hope is that people will come to this site, that they will upload information, we'll review it, and if we verify that it's a bona fide event, that it actually happened, and that the videos or other information that maybe accompany it actually match up, haven't been altered in some way, then we're going to publish that to the public. There is a benefit to having a place where people can go to see what has happened. So it's not 30 seconds or a minute on the 10 o'clock news. It's there for people to see with their own eyes what has been happening to their neighbors, to families across Chicagoland. And I'm confident that jurisdictions elsewhere across the country are going to see the benefit as well. But having this repository, not in an archive that's buried away, but that is public facing, I think will add to transparency and give people the feeling like they can actually take back control over their own lives and fight against the tyranny of a federal government that's out of control.
But people are posting it on social media immediately live events. What is going to be the difference then? If it's only to post it, or it's going to be a board taking it to court? What is
The difference is that all of this information is going to be in one place. And so you will see a pattern of conduct. When the site is fully populated with other events, you're going to be able to look on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis where this is happening. You're going to be able to see times of day, days of weeks when this activity is taking place. There's a lot of functionality on this site that goes way beyond just a specific social media post. And as we've seen, people are posting things on Facebook and other platforms. Frankly, I think Meta owns everything at this point. And they have taken things down. They have deleted and blocked. This site intentionally is not on a U.S.-sponsored platform, so we don't run the risk of anybody trying to censor information that is posted. It will remain in perpetuity on this website. Yes, ma'am.
In some cases, agents are masked, but for those that aren't masked and that are identified and verified, why aren't those names being published?
Well, first of all, we got to know what they are. They don't wear their name tags, so there's some work that will need to be done, but somebody knows who these people are. But I will also say, even though they're masked, and I know this from my own work on identifying allegations of police misconduct, every agent that's out there, and particularly those ones that are engaged in misconduct, there's a tell. They have a height. They have a weight. They carry themselves in a particular way. They wear a particular kind of vest. They do have insignia of the agencies that they're with. They have a badge. Many of them wear jewelry. They wear rings. They wear watches. There are ways in which we can build profiles of these folks. And to be clear, we're not talking about doxing anybody. We're not talking about giving their names, giving their identity. That's not for us to do, and that would, in many instances, put them at risk. But building a profile so these folks aren't anonymous and that they don't just disappear. I think a lot, for example, about the agent who on Halloween up in Evanston pointed a gun at people and then went around the side of a car, put a person down on the ground, was laying on top of him, and there's video showing him punching that same person in the head. That agent has to be held accountable. Now, again, we're not going to prejudge what the circumstances are, right? There's no very little audio. We don't know all the facts and circumstances. But surely the actions that were depicted on the video warrant an investigation and not the reflective whitewash that we consistently hear from DHS that exonerates the agents without any investigation whatsoever being done. That is not the right way to do things. And frankly, Kristi Noem should be ashamed of herself. It seemed like minutes yesterday. After this poor woman lost her life, she called her a domestic terrorist and said that she was weaponizing her car. Now, again, video is just a snapshot in time, but I will tell you, these experienced eyes from the video that I saw, this woman was trying to get out. And frankly, to me, it had shades of Laquan McDonald, the last car in. The agents come out of the car hop, and they immediately go to the car and try to pull this woman out. There's video that's now come out where she's trying to motion them to go around her. There's no circumstances, at least from the little bit of videotaped evidence that we've seen, that suggests that she was in any way trying to weaponize her car and harm someone. And even if she is, and let me just finish this point, how dare the Secretary of Homeland Security, without knowing any of those facts, it was impossible for her to know the true totality of what happened out there, declaring this poor woman a domestic terrorist.
So those names won't be published, the agent names won't be published, but is the project saying that they're collecting evidence on who these agents are?
Yes, that's a big part of what we're doing. When you go to the website, what you will see is there's a specific page. And when someone fills out information about an incident, they can tell us what they saw, give us descriptors of who the agents were, take photographs. Now, again, I'm going to caution folks, you got to be careful doing this. If you can see them through your phone, that's close enough. We do not want people putting themselves in harm's way to record the actions of these agents. But there's ways in which this information can be recorded and gathered, and someone, frankly, with a grand jury subpoena is going to figure it out. Our goal is let's collect a body of work, a body of evidence, and then let the local authorities do what they do best. Yes, ma'am.
People can, some people may be worried about their own identity
Yes.
being revealed.
Yes.
Can they post anonymously, and how does that impact verification?
Well, they can't post anonymously because, candidly, we're assuming that there's going to be efforts made to trick us into posting information that's totally fabricated or in some ways altered. But their identities will remain confidential with us. And we have lots of encryption and other methods that we baked into this website to make sure that their identities will be safe. And as I said in my opening remarks, absent a court order signed by a judge, not an administrative order, but an order signed by a judge, we will not divulge the identities of anybody who is posting on our site. We want people to feel comfortable that they're doing it. Now, look, the truth is people are posting all over with their names on their own websites and so forth, but we want to make sure we take that extra step in precaution. We don't want that to be a barrier for people to come and utilize our site. Yes, ma'am.
Can you speak to how this project is different than the State Accountability
Yes.
Commission, and if they are going to work together to complement each other?
Yeah, I mean, I have known Judge Ruben Castillo. I should probably call him former Chief Judge Ruben Castillo since I was a baby lawyer. We've known each other for 30 years. We've worked together on a number of different things. We've been in conversation. We both believe that these two initiatives will work in harmony with each other. The State Commission, to my understanding, is really focused on documenting the harm and the trauma to communities, to come up with policies and solutions to address the needs of those residents. That is a different, but also, frankly, uniquely appropriate thing for the state to do. We are, as I said, an independent repository to collect the information and to provide information about the agents that are alleged to have engaged in the misconduct. So I am confident, both because of our personal relationships with people on the commission, and as I said, have great deal of respect and admiration for Judge Castillo, but also our missions are different, but they can coexist and I think work in harmony together. Yes, sir.
Do you believe that state police, Chicago police, the state's attorney office should be arresting and charging federal agents, especially in these incidents you mentioned already? What's kind of the mechanism for justice?
Well, I think people should do their jobs. If there's a homicide that's been committed, there's a mechanism which we all well know. An investigation is typically done, a grand jury is convened, information is gathered, and then balls and strikes are called as to whether or not a crime has been committed and whether or not it is provable in a court of law. I think people should do their jobs. But we are gathering this information in one place, hopefully to facilitate that. And look, I should add this. As you well know, a lot of these incidents have happened outside of the city of Chicago. They've happened in small communities that have very small police forces that typically rely upon the county, the sheriff, the state police, the state's attorney to really conduct these investigations because they don't have the bandwidth to be able to do this on their own. So collecting this information, particularly things that happen in smaller communities, I think is going to be incredibly important. And we hope, frankly, that our neighbors in Chicagoland will see the value of providing information about what's happened in their own communities. And then, we leave it to local law enforcement to decide where they're going to weigh in and how. But certainly, we've seen things that I think warrant investigations, not the least of which is the unfortunate killing of Mr. Gonzalez after he dropped off his 2 kids at daycare. Yes, ma'am.
You said that
Oh, sorry.
organizations have been afraid to be involved in this initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Are these local organizations, or who
Yes.
are you talking about that will not be involved
Well,
in this initiative?
I'm not going to name names because I'm not. I don't feel a need to put them on Front Street. But look, it's not a secret that this Trump administration has weaponized arms of the federal government to come after not-for-profit, community-based organizations and threaten their 501c3 status. That's real. That is happening. There are organizations across Chicagoland who have received threatening letters from the federal government. That's also real. So I get it. And I have to respect their caution and concern for standing up here with me today. But I feel confident, because I know these folks, that we are going to continue to work together to get the word out, to make sure that the constituencies that they serve understand that this is another tool and resource for them. And we'll carry on that way. Standing up at a press conference doesn't mean, or not, means little. What's most important is what's happening on the ground every day, block by block, in neighborhoods. And we're going to be out there with them, making sure that people understand that this opportunity exists. Yes, sir. Sorry.
You mentioned the project also intends to serve local government jurisdictions. I'm assuming you probably had the opportunity to share the project with Mayor Johnson. And if you did, can you share what was his response toward the initiative?
Well, I have not spoken with him directly. I know that our people have spoken and they're aware of it. And I think that what we're doing totally aligns with the things that he has said. We're taking words and putting them into action. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that if the federal government finds out about this initiative that they will try to shut
I
it
have
down?
every reason to believe that they are watching right now. Yeah, when we did a soft announcement of this last fall, literally immediately the Attorney General issued a threat to me and to the governor and said, rattled the saber and said we were going to get letters. So I have every reason to believe that they will not be silent in the face of this initiative. But what I also know is everything that we're doing completely is consistent with our rights, my rights as a private citizen to exercise my First Amendment rights to speak. We are not, thankfully, at a point where the federal government can prosecute lawfully. Doesn't mean they're not going to try, but they can't lawfully prosecute someone for standing up and saying, we're going to collect all this information, we're going to push it out to the public and make sure that people see across the Chicagoland what the federal government has done to terrorize our communities.
Can you share more?
Let me go to Mary Ann first.
Did you come to this idea through why? Why is it this?
So the truth is, I watched the first couple weeks of the Operation Midway Blitz, and I could see the escalation, and particularly when the CBP, the Customs Border Patrol agents, came to a city en masse. I'm somebody who spent a big chunk of my life watching, investigating law enforcement misconduct, and you could see it happening before your eyes. And candidly, I'd been talking to one of my team members who said, well, what would you do if you were mayor? And I said, I would do this, and this. She said, well, do it. I said, you know what? You're right. So I started having conversations with folks. I started thinking about the ways in which we could do this that was complementary to the work that's already being done by advocates and stakeholders across the Chicagoland region, and had the benefit of a lot of wise counsel and support and work of many people. And really, this is where the idea, our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, told us, do something. And this is my doing something about this issue. I could not, in good conscience, sit and watch what was happening and just feel frustrated and angry. I needed to do something constructive about it. And I hope that this work, that's not just me by a long shot, gives people a sense of empowerment and hope. It has been a really humbling experience to work on this, to put this together. But it's also been exhilarating because it feels like we are on to something. Everyone that I have talked to about this project in the last few months, and even in the last 24 hours, letting people know that today was launch day, we have gotten enthusiastic support. And so I expect that to continue, and I'm hoping that we can reach the people who we really need to reach, not the regular consumers of the news, but the people that are, in their homes, that are afraid, the businesses that have been really detrimentally impacted by what's happened. I'm hoping that we are a voice for them. Yes, sir.
Share a little bit more about the threat from the Attorney General's office.
Well, I think you saw it and you reported it. She said, her premise was that we are going to be a vehicle for people to verbally, physically threaten federal agents. Nothing could be further from the truth. As I said, I stand here as former law enforcement. I stand here as somebody who has deep, abiding respect for the work that federal law enforcement does every day when they do things the right way, when they follow their oath, when they follow their training. But I'm also been a person for much of my life that when I see someone who has power and abuses that power, and particularly in ways that hurt other people, I have never hesitated to step out and say, this is not okay, and to take action to hold them accountable. So if you look at my life's work, if you look at the things that I have stood for, particularly in the space of law enforcement accountability, this is totally in line with that. And I'm not going to let some person named Pam Bondi or anybody else in the federal government try to intimidate me into being silent in the face of so much harm that has been done. It's not going to happen.
You said that if you were mayor, you would have launched a project like this. Do you think the mayor has not done enough?
No, I think that everybody has to make their own decisions about the best way that they can utilize the resources and power that they have. I'm a private citizen. I don't have the tools of government at my disposal. But I have a will. I have a vision. We've been supported in this effort. And luckily, I have a group of people who, like me, are horrified by what they're seeing and are willing to step up and do something about it. Yes, sir.
How many people are involved in the project? You mentioned investigators, former federal agents that are reviewing the footage. Can you put a number on how many people are out there?
There's a small group of us. There'll be the first line reviewers will be a small handful of people, and then the second line review, it will vary depending on people's personal schedules and circumstances, but I'll say 5 to 6 people that will be doing the second level review of these incidents.
Can you say a little bit more about the background of these people?
Well, again, I want to be careful. I've said in my opening remarks, many of us lawyers, we are former federal law enforcement, some former federal agents, and we are other people who have been trained investigators in looking at allegations of misconduct.
You may have covered this. Is this national? Do you want to hear from people in Minneapolis?
I actually have already started hearing from people in Minneapolis. Right now, we're focused on Chicagoland. The platform is built to scale up. I'm letting my mayors across the country know that this resource is available. And my hope is, frankly, that people will replicate it in their own communities. But right now, we're focused on Chicagoland.
When you say you heard from Minneapolis, what are they asking, or what are they saying?
Can you work on identifying the officer who shot and killed Miss? Good. Yeah, I've heard and seen that. Again, all of our cities who were seeing peaceful protests turn into something else in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, we're all still recovering. We're all still healing. And Minneapolis, as you know, was ground zero for that. So I am glad that what we've seen so far is peaceful protest, that people are doing what they feel compelled to do, to voice their concern, their opposition, but doing it in a peaceful way. And, I watched very carefully yesterday the words of Mayor Fry, Governor Walz. I'm assuming the Attorney General will weigh in, and the county prosecutor there, and they'll do the right thing. We are a country of laws. We are a system of actual, real justice, despite how it's been subverted over this last year. I think our local governments will remain strong, and I have confidence, not only here, but across the country, that people will continue to find their voice and do the right thing. I think we probably have time for one more question.
Would you mind clarifying how long you've been working on this project, and also the cases that you already have thus far? How many are there, and are you still collecting cases?
Yeah, this is ongoing. We wanted to kind of front load the site with some of the most, frankly, notorious incidents. You'll see on there the murder of Mr. Gonzalez, the shooting of Miss Martinez, and others in Evanston, in Old Irving on October 28th, down on the southeast side in the 10th Ward. So we have collected information about a number of these most egregious incidents that many of you have reported on. But we want this to be a resident-driven initiative. That's why we're encouraging people to go to reporticenow.com. Are we good?
Yep, we're good.
All right. Thank you all.